conjure grotesque creatures and gruesome effects. Coming up, we'll learn how Hollywood's most hell-raising creations are fabricated. And we'll meet the father of modern makeup effects, who turned The Exorcist into one of the most terrifying films of all time.
We have such sights to show you. Next on Movie Magic.
And 1, 2, 3, stab.
Since the days of Frankenstein and Dracula, the best horror films have always been driven by unforgettable characters. Today, the maniacal Freddy Krueger, created by writer-director Wes Craven, has become one of the most recognizable and popular characters in the world.
I always feel like the real impact does not come from blood. I mean, you can have, gallons of blood. You can have rooms full of blood. But if the emotional impact isn't there, if you don't have an investment in characters, then it's either meaningless or it trivializes the sort of attendant suffering that is going on.
On the set of Wes Craven's new Nightmare, star Robert Englund, who plays Freddy, makes the transformation into Elm Street's arch nemesis. Freddy's scarred and burned face, designed by makeup artist David Miller, is integral to Englund's performance.
When you wear the makeup, it does this strange thing to an actor. It actually frees up the performance a bit. We're so used to working with our own faces, and we're stuck with these. But when you have all that makeup on, it kind of frees you up. It makes you feel a little more comfortable to be artificial.
Hi, kids!
But great horror characters must go through a long development process before they are turned loose with a chainsaw or machete. First, they emerge from the minds of horror meisters like Wes Craven or Clive Barker, creator of the Hellraiser films.
You know, I've been storyboarding this, and I've kept coming back to the image of the teeth closing around him in a different direction. Almost like a Venus flytrap, you know? And then
An accomplished artist as well as writer, Barker communicates his ideas visually to the effects team, who will bring his creatures to life. Gary Tunnicliffe and the crew at Image Animation International have created the makeup for the first 3 Hellraiser films and are about to embark on Hellraiser 4, Bloodlines.
Nobody escapes us.
With a normal director, you show them a drawing and they look at it and they kind of have an idea for a change. With Clive, he will take that drawing and he will put a piece of paper down and he will draw what he wants.
Hellraiser's star and leader of the film's sadomasochistic Cenobites is the incomparable Pinhead.
We'll tear your soul apart.
At Image Animation's Southern California studio, Tunnicliffe works on a new makeup design to be worn by Doug Bradley, who plays the needle-headed monstrosity. Tunnicliffe first sketches a layout for the latex facial pieces called appliances, which will be used for the makeup. The layout is sketched onto a plaster cast of Bradley's head.
I'm thinking if we sculpt the back, run one out of foam.
Next, the sculpting process begins. Tunnicliffe uses an oil-based clay called plastiline to fashion Pinhead's hairless skull and trademark grid. This grid, carefully laid out so it is evenly proportioned across the skull, was not part of the original makeup design.
What happened was somebody drew a graph on a bust in order to make sure the pins were even. And as soon as everyone saw the graph, they said, perfect, leave the graph in.
Once the sculpting is complete, the appliances are cast out of foam latex. When this process is finished, they are prepared for the all-important final step. Only now can Tunnicliffe begin the application of the 138 nails that appear to be driven into Pinhead's skull. Each of the hand-painted plastic protrusions is affixed to one of the appliances with super glue.
In a perfect world, we'd just hammer nails straight into Doug's head. But for some reason, is really against that. Actors.
Finally, the makeup is ready to be applied to the star himself. While Bradley has played the role 3 times before, Tunnicliffe makes subtle changes to the makeup for each film.
The truth is that if I am standing still doing nothing, the makeup and the costume are screaming off that screen. So, in a way, the less I do, the better it reads, and I have to just come to terms with that.
Once in full makeup, Bradley takes his gruesome visage to the set. When the camera rolls, Pinhead comes to life, and one of Hollywood's most horrific adversaries takes center stage.
This is a Holocaust. Waiting to wake itself.
What you're looking at is a guy with nails in his head. It's a horrendous idea, but your eyes are drawn to the image, and you look at it. And why? Because there's something about it very regal, very ordered. It's a great image. It's one that, if only we could create again and again.
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
When we return, we'll meet the man who changed the face of horror makeup forever with The Exorcist.
Taken from his family, forced into a strange world, he found the courage to break free and the wisdom
Put down your weapon!
to bring 2 worlds together. From the director of the Academy Award-winning Journey of Hope comes Squanto, A Warrior's Tale, rated PG. Starts Friday, October 28th at a theater near you.
Pinhead, a young makeup artist named Dick Smith, revolutionized the craft of special makeup effects. Smith's inventive spirit and passion for realism evolved during his 15 years as the head of NBC's makeup department. His early feature film work was highlighted by transforming Dustin Hoffman into the 121-year-old Jack Crabb in Little Big Man.
I started doing makeup way back in 1945, and I got into television. There wasn't anything like special makeup effects in those days. It wasn't until I worked on The Exorcist in 1972, I guess it was, that there was even a call for the kind of change on camera that was required.
The Exorcist tells the story of a young girl named Regan who is possessed by the devil. The lead role was given to an unknown actress named Linda Blair.
Really, the hardest thing on The Exorcist was arriving at Linda Blair's Regan demon makeup. I did a series of about 5 or 6 different makeups on her with appliances. First, just to see if I could make her look mean. I mean, this sweet little, apple-cheeked girl.
The testing process, seen in these rare camera tests, went on for weeks. Blair and her photo double, Eileen Dietz, gamely endured more than 5 hours per day in the makeup chair.
Some of them were overdone at first. Finally, we arrived at something that looked like it was workable, and I perfected it.
But Blair's makeup was only the beginning. The film required an incredible number of special rigs and mechanical devices to achieve such demonic effects as Regan's vacant eyes, serpentine tongue, and unforgettable projectile vomiting.
Eventually, I worked out a way of molding flat tubes out of heat-forming plastic that could be connected with a kind of a pipe that went through the mouth. A partial mask was fitted over to conceal it and to make her look like the Regan demon, and the rest of the makeup was conformed to that. Then the special effects man could pump pea soup right through this thing, and it would spray out at the camera or whatever.
Perhaps the most shocking image in the film occurs when Regan's head rotates a full 360 degrees during a violent satanic rage. To accomplish the effect, Smith designed and built a life-size dummy of Linda Blair, complete with rotating head. Smith first cast a Linda Blair dummy in foam latex. Working with special effects man Marcel Vercouter, he then configured the dummy's rotating head and animated the face with radio-controlled eyes.
Begone! In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit!
The resulting effect left no doubt in the minds of movie audiences that young Regan was not alone inside her body.
Father, and the Holy Spirit! Damien!
Amen.
God, defender of the human race!
Smith's makeup effects for The Exorcist mainly involved altering his subject's face. The 1980 film Altered States required full body transformations that were entirely unprecedented. In Altered States, Dr. Edward Jessup, played by William Hurt, experiments with untested drugs, which cause his body to go through a series of agonizing contortions.
The most challenging thing about the Altered States assignment was in transforming someone from head to foot with foam rubber. I mean, a huge suit. Now, to make that look believable was technically and artistically frightening.
Smith spent more than 4 weeks sculpting the amorphous contours of 3 full-body suits out of plastiline clay. While the suits had to represent dramatic distortions of the human form, it was important to Smith that Hurt be able to express emotion through them as well. Then came the most difficult part. To allow Hurt to quickly get in and out of the suits on the set, Smith had each suit cast as a single piece of foam latex. The enormous plaster molds were constructed with large filling holes to accommodate the massive syringes used to inject the foam. The normally predictable baking or curing process had to be carefully monitored, as Smith had never before cooked up such large batches of foam. A custom oven even had to be constructed to accommodate the immense molds. Removing the appliances from the molds also required special care. Any damage to the suit at this point meant that the elaborate process would have to be repeated. Finally, Smith carefully trimmed and hand-painted the suits. When the finished pieces were presented to star William Hurt at a camera test, he was overwhelmed with the depth of Smith's artistic achievement.
What he had done was he had actually created with his hands a sculpture, a living sculpture, which was just phenomenally expressive of the progression into agony and that howling sorrow, that incomprehensible agony was something that he wanted to achieve with his hands.
In other scenes, Smith broke new ground with his use of air bladders, carefully controlled balloons that expand and contract to create movement.
The first time I had to use a bladder was on The Exorcist. And you remember little Linda Blair at one point has her throat blow up like a bullfrog. When it came to Altered States, this was a far more complex thing. I couldn't simply put a balloon or something underneath the skin.
Instead, Smith had to mold expandable tubing, which was nearly flat and could conform to Hurt's arm.
What he had done was he'd used balloons and a harmonica device and compressed air. That was it. I laughed because it was so effective and so simple.
Smith's revolutionary use of bladders took center stage in this remarkable scene. When Jessup's experiments go too far, his skeletal system reconstitutes beneath his skin, resulting in a painful metamorphosis. Altered States and The Exorcist are but 2 of the more than 50 films for which Dick Smith has created special makeup effects. In 1985, after 40 years in the business, he was honored with an Academy Award for his work on Amadeus. Today, Smith passes on the knowledge of his half-century career through a comprehensive makeup course he has designed for advanced students. He also lectures and conducts seminars at the Yoyogi Animation School in Japan.
Also, the director may say, I don't like that, no, change it. When I was contacted by a Japanese school in Tokyo that wanted to start a special makeup effects course, I agreed to license my course to them and also to go over twice a year to give lectures or demonstrations. Well, to me, there's a great sense of magic and wonder and even something godlike about changing a human face or an actor or person into something entirely different, a creature or another person or whatever it is, and having that person come to life. Now, I don't know, I get a great thrill out of that.
Equally as important as Smith's work is his reputation for boundless generosity. Despite his dozens of innovations, he never keeps secrets from his peers, choosing to share all of his formulas and compounds with other artists.
He has inspired me for years and years and years. I carry his memory with me all the time. When I think about quality, when I think about courage, and continuing to go on toward the vision in a humane and compassionate and generous way, I think about him.
Next, the godfather of gore reveals the secrets of some of film's most gruesome illusions.
Travel provided by Continental, offering business first-class service at a business-class fare.
In the morbid realm of horror effects, the rule of thumb is the bloodier, the better. Tom Savini always wanted to be an actor, but fate dealt him another hand. Today, he is recognized throughout the effects community as one of the finest practitioners of gore effects.
I have somehow become the king of splatter. That's because I did Friday the 13th and Dawn of the Dead right in a row. So producers would call me to get the same kind of stuff, I guess.
Even a blood squib, an effects device used to simulate a bullet hit, gets Savini's special touch. After fastening an explosive charge to the back of a protective metal plate, Tom fills a condom with twice the amount of fake blood generally used for squibs. He then tightly wraps the condom to ensure that the blood will not just ooze, but splatter.
Sometimes I feel like an assassin or a hired killer. I load up my car with my little tools in my tray, and I go some strange place and I kill people.
Far from Hollywood, in a blue-collar section of Pittsburgh, Savini oversees a busy workshop where his ghastly creatures and horrific effects are born. Many of Savini's effects involve specially designed props, which can have a shocking effect when applied to an actor or actress. For this scene from Day of the Dead, Savini fashioned a custom cutout shovel, which is used to gruesomely kill a zombie. After the prop shovel is used with the actor, a real shovel is used to finish the job.
Kicked up a stone. Oh!
That's pretty good, though.
Hey, Tom.
What now?
Well, it looks like we're out of blood again.
Out of blood again? Get up! You're fired. The important thing is to establish the real weapon to give credence, believability, to the fake one. Same thing with the hammers. Establish the real one before you use the fake one. Go away, you're fired too.
When the blood starts to flow, Savini uses concealed tubing attached to syringes filled with red liquid to produce the desired effect. This backstabbing rig is comprised of a tube which runs to a syringe filled with the fake blood. By manipulating the syringe, the operator controls both the quantity and the timing of the blood flow. One of the techniques for which Savini is best known is the use of false fronts or dummy bodies. The real arms and head of an actor are combined with a fake body, which is usually being mutilated or consumed. This technique was used in one of Savini's most infamous films, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and its sequel, Day of the Dead. Zombies were gunned down by the hundreds, but when the Walking Dead managed to catch up with an unfortunate victim, a feast would ensue.
I mean, my job was to sit around and think of ways to kill people. There were some ways in the script we came up with a lot more of them. So we'd go to George and we'd say, how about if we take a screwdriver and drive it in some zombie's ear? And George would go, okay. And then we would, 2 hours later, would do it.
Perhaps the most memorable death scene from Day of the Dead was this poor soldier's demise, torn in half and devoured by a mob of hungry undead. Savini first constructed an elevated floor with a hole in it to allow actor Joe Pilato to hide his body from the chest down. He then attached a foam latex body section to Joe's shoulders and arms, complete with a large cavity to hold the blood and guts. The fake body technique is not as simple as it first appears.
You couldn't lay the body on me, right now the way I am, and have it look real, even if I put my head back. My chest has to be up for it to lie on, so it looks like the continuation of my shoulder line into the chest.
With the fake body and actor in perfect alignment, Savini has created one of the most vivid and gruesome death scenes ever shown on the big screen. Images like these may not be for everybody, But at the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors, an eccentric group gathers each year to pay tribute to their favorite directors and stars. Their heroes appreciate the attention, knowing they may never get the respect they deserve from the filmmaking community.
You know, in Hollywood, it's okay for a horror film to save a studio, but it's still not the class act. But in Europe, the horror film is as important as American jazz, as westerns, as gangster films. It's one of the things that Hollywood does great.
Here we go, lighting it up.
Horror films don't stand for things that you can point to when you're walking down the sidewalk, but if you extract from them what they're really about, these sort of subconscious realities, then we all do have these elements. We all do have Freddy Krueger.
Parker. And action.
The startling images which provide this kind of big screen impact are the contributions of the unique effects artists who practice this dark craft. Whether it's the bizarre characterizations of Pinhead or Freddy Krueger, the groundbreaking artistry of Dick Smith, or the morbid manifestations of Tom Savini, the proprietors of Hollywood's fright factories will continue to satisfy audiences who love to be scared to death by this chilling brand of movie magic.